Welcome to the People Property Plays podcast. My name is Matthew Watts and I'm your host. And today I am thrilled to be joined by Tom Collins, COO of L1 Property. So Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot. Good to be here.
Not at all. Well, look, how and why did you get into real estate?
I started investing just in houses, like a house that I bought at auction. Rather naively bought it thinking it would be very easy to do. It was an 1890s house, quite old, a terrace on the south coast, and had this PowerPoint presentation with my renovation budget on it, and I took loads of pictures and I was ready to go. And 12 months later, after a whole load of pain, it cost us 6 times more than we thought it was going to cost. We ended up with a really nice product, and probably my brother saved me in the end. He was very handy, unlike me, like doing a lot of the work. But we ended up in a good place, even though it was a very painful experience and I learned a lot. And basically I realized that I enjoyed the property process, like looking at assets, doing deals, doing renovation, doing work, like more than what I was doing in my day job. So I wanted to find a job that let me match the property with the 9 to 5 that I do, or not always a 9 to 5, but my day job.
So if you went to Oxford and you studied economics and management. That's
right.
And then you went to McKinsey.
Yeah, I studied economics and management because I was interested in business, in this kind of concept of business. I don't really know why. I think I was kind of reading books when I was growing up and various people mentioned it to me. So that's why I went to Oxford. And then when I was there, I didn't really know which sector I wanted to go into. I was kind of just wanted somewhere that I could learn and try lots of different things and also get really good training. So I thought that consulting was a good place for that. I would do the standard 2-year analyst program and then come out and figure out what I wanted to do, which when I arrived, I realized that was basically everyone there. There was nobody who 100% knew they wanted to do consulting. They just enjoyed working on hard problems and working with exceptional people.
And so you just thought it would just be a good training ground.
Yeah, good training ground. I wanted to do travel as well. When I was there, I did a project in the Philippines and Brazil. The same project. I was like working for a client that had operations in both countries. So lots of travel as kind of a brand new 21, 22-year-old. It was a good place to learn as well. Lots of long nights, but a good toolkit, I think. I would definitely recommend it to anyone. I love my time there.
And in terms of mentors or advisors or kind of parents, did you have people who'd kind of gone down that consulting route before or property route before, or were they giving you?
No, I think my family, I think, always invested in property. They just like bricks and mortar. So that was kind of instilled into me as an investment.
As in like buy-to-lets and... Yeah,
just like 1 or 2 buy-to-lets as like kind of a pension, kind of standard, I think, with a lot of people in the UK, back when it was more in fashion. So kind of property had been instilled in me a little bit, definitely not consulting. I didn't really know what consulting was when I arrived. I remember in my first year, everyone else had spring weeks already lined up and the process seemed to start earlier and earlier, especially for economics and management, which was a very career-focused course, I would say, compared to some of the others. And I just stumbled into a presentation by a consulting firm and thought that sounded good and applied to some of them and got very lucky and managed to get on one of the schemes.
So what were the kind of the skill sets that you kind of built in those first few years at McKinsey, and what are the projects that you were working on?
Skill sets, I think the main one is really analytical, like really good analysis. You're just given a new problem, you don't know anything about it, maybe lots of data, you can do lots of interviews, and you're basically trying to form a perspective on something that's brand new. Within the first week, you basically have like the first readout from the client at the end of the first week, and it's kind of a very intense but fun environment to be in, I would say, to learn when you're just starting out. So analysis and then communication. You're literally presenting to the board or the CEO, and it's a big part of the culture in consulting where the most junior person on the team presents the work that they do, which I really like that part of the culture. So you get to present and have these really senior meetings as someone who's very young, and you build your communication skills, which is, I think the combination of those two things is very powerful.
And in terms of the sectors, clearly geographies, you worked internationally, but what sectors did you focus on?
Sectors was also a whole range of sectors. I didn't do very much property. I did a lot of the sectors that are pretty represented in the UK: banking, insurance, basic materials, a whole load of sectors. Did some public sector stuff. And probably the ones I enjoyed the most were like private equity due diligence projects. They were the most intense, but you learned a lot about a specific topic. There was one project I remember, which was a 3-week DD on a potential Formula One track. It was for an investor, McKinsey is extremely confidential, so you don't usually talk in detail about the projects, but it was a completely new sector, never done anything with Formula One. And outside in, you talk to world-leading experts on calls, you get access to amazing data about the sector, and by the end of it, you feel like you're not an expert in it, but you can have you're close to expert on the topic that you've been given, and you can very confidently present back to the client on what the output should be.
And
so
what the opportunities, what the risks,
what the opportunities are, what the risks are, like what further work they should do. You basically need to be credible. You walk into the room having spent 3 weeks on it, and you've got to be as credible as a member of their team that's maybe working on it for a year. That's the challenge, but that's what consulting firms do very well. I think those kind of high-level strategic projects. You
decided to move, quote unquote, into industry, and you joined Uber.
Yes,
was that always the plan, or?
Yeah, I was considering doing the kind of one of the other standard routes was going for an MBA, but I felt like I'd already done quite a lot of studying, and my degree was quite business focused and economics focused anyway. So I decided not to do an MBA, and I wanted to go and go into the real world, basically, in inverted commas. So Uber seemed like a good place to go. It was really early. It was big when I joined. It wasn't publicly listed. It was around the time when Travis Kalanick was about to leave. So it still had the original culture. The people there were exceptional that I got to work with. I remember walking into almost a driver onboarding center where they're onboarding new drivers into Uber, and the people there were running it and onboarding all these drivers, and like they could see the results of what they were doing. And for me, it was the first time when I felt actually you could influence a business, like actually take decisions and change things directly. In consulting, you're always one step removed, because you're basically convincing the person or advising the person that's going to do it. And I remember walking into this room and the people there were just doing it. They just changed their approach, like change what they said to people, like try and improve the output of this center, really micro things, but a direct impact on what they were doing. And it was, I just remember that feeling of like, wow, they own it. This is theirs, which I really liked.
And so that kind of strategy, planning, execution, trying to roll up some of the skills.
The whole loop, yeah. And I think what was really interesting was the compounding progress. Like in consulting, I felt and still do now, you kind of doing one-off things. You do one project, then you move on to the next project, you kind of hand it over. So what you're doing doesn't always compound very well. You don't really learn. You personally don't get to see the learning loops I think are most valuable. Whereas at Uber, when they were improving a process, or when they were starting a new process or changing or starting a new product, like Uber Eats was taking off or just started when I joined, you see the compounding progress, and like you change something and you look back in 6 months and you can actually see this is where we started, this is where we got to, and it's just those small incremental improvements.
And in terms of being surrounded, you touched obviously the quality of the people, but a global startup, scale up. What were some of the kind of reflections and learnings of being in that high growth environment?
The people were just amazing, so high performing. The culture was crazy, like kind of nothing else that I've experienced ever since. Like this was 2016, 2017, and I remember I'd been involved in the organizational restructuring at McKinsey, 1 or 2 projects, and normally it's a 12-month process. There's like all this work that goes into it and modeling, and then you need to get board approval, and then there's like a whole communication strategy. And I arrived at Uber and they announced that they were going to change the structure of their team. There's about 100 people in the UK, change the structure of their team. And they announced it like middle of December, and then by the start of January it was done. Like that quickly. I had a conversation with everyone, what role do you want to do? Everyone then started producing their plans, and they were reviewing the plans, and it was just like an amazing culture. And yeah, it was a great place to work, even though it was short. And I remember another reflection I have is most of the people I was working with at Uber have started their own businesses. Like the amount of people that had kind of come from that experience and have the skills to be an entrepreneur, start a business, raise VC funding, or go the bootstrap route. Like if I look at my network of people that were at Uber at the time I was there, it's crazy how high the proportion is that people have started their own businesses, which is kind of an amazing indicator in itself.
You moved to British Airways in strategy and revenue management. Why did you decide to move there? Yeah,
that was kind of a strange move, I think, for the people I was working with at Uber. And it was a difficult decision for me, but I'm so glad that I went to do it. Basically, I'm a bit of an av geek in my spare time. I just love aviation, airlines, planes. It's a very like sexy industry, I would say. I think it comes from living in Sri Lanka when I was growing up. I remember flying as a 10-year-old, flying on Emirates to Colombo and landing in this strange country. And I was used to really enjoy the process of flying back and forth. And my dad was telling me about Airbus planes versus Boeing planes and which one was better. And I just loved airlines. And growing up and always wanted to work in an airline. I still want to start my own airline. I have a crazy ambition that probably will never, definitely won't happen because it's a great way to lose lots of money. But I just wanted to experience the airline industry. And I thought that an amazing way to do that would be to join British Airways, which is the biggest airline in the UK, long haul anyway. So I joined in the strategy team, got to see the overall business, how they would plan things, how they decided on, for example, whether to launch a new business class seat was one of the projects that I did there. I was also looking at pilot training, kind of very aviation specific. And I just treated it like my own MBA on the airline industry. On a Friday, I would go and shadow different people in the operation. I'd go and shadow somebody doing turnarounds. And then I'd go to the engineering department, and like the whole airline was there, and people were very open to me just kind of messaging them and saying, I just want to come and see what you do. Like that was like, people did that. They'd just go out and see the operation.
So that was just completely outside of your kind of core job description or your focus.
Yeah,
it was just like satisfying your insatiable appetite.
I just wanted to learn about the
curiosity.
airline industry, and be involved in it. And everyone that I was speaking to when I was there were just so passionate about it. They just loved it like me. So it was a great place to work. I mean, it really attracts lots of av geeks, the airline industry. And also it's a good place to travel as well, because you get amazing staff travel benefits. And a lot of people that I was working with were also pretty young, and they would just travel a lot. And when the seats were empty, it was like, if there was a space on the plane, you could buy a last minute ticket and go and travel to all these amazing places on the BA network. So that was another benefit. And I think that's one of the reasons why people generally don't leave British Airways. Like the average tenure is extremely high because they love what they're doing. The day-to-day job's very enjoyable. The people you're working with also love the industry, and you get these amazing travel benefits. So
why did you leave British Airways, and why did you leave the aviation industry? Because clearly you're very passionate about it, very curious about like that sector, but also then you've got the skill set to back it up as well. And it's like the blend of the two. Because you went back to McKinsey.
I went back to McKinsey because I was at British Airways, so I did 6 months in strategy, and I realized I wanted again more of a proper job. Strategy was feeling a bit like consulting for me, so I just joined the revenue management team in like a line management role. So I was leading the Middle East revenue management team. So I was pricing, I was accountable for the revenue, I had a P&L target, I was managing a team of 5 very experienced pricing and revenue management analysts. And I got a good experience doing team management and how to manage somebody that's got 30 years experience and is an expert at what they do and is much more knowledgeable about you, about their role. So that was really good. I traveled to the Middle East on behalf of BA and kind of met all these people. And it was amazing seeing the reputation that BA had in the Middle East, in Kuwait and Qatar and these places. But ultimately, I wanted to progress, and I felt like the rate of progression and learning for me had plateaued, and I could stay there for 4 or 5 years and still be doing the same role and not learned that much. Like I'd kind of seen the cycle. I'd done 18 months, so like 1.5 revenue cycles, and kind of seen it, and I just didn't think it was going to change that much.
So that kind of consulting, like fast-paced turnaround.
To get back into something that's more fast-paced and have faster progression. I felt like at British Airways, maybe the progression is kind of like climbing up stairs, and you can only climb up onto the next stair if the person in front of you kind of leaves or they also climb up. And you could be waiting on your stair for years, really, and it's not really based that much on your performance. There are some exceptions, but in general, that's how I felt it was. And McKinsey or consulting in general, I felt was like jumping on an escalator. It was like kind of insane, just completely different level of progression. So that's why I went back into consulting. And the idea for me was to go back into consulting, but specifically focused on the airline industry. Now I was credible, because when I was first there, it was quite difficult to get an airline projects. They were the most in-demand projects. Everyone wanted to do them. There was usually lots of travel involved, and you basically had no chance of getting on them. And so when I came back with experience from British Airways, suddenly all the airline projects were open to me because they love having people that have genuine industry experience. And I could say I'd worked in British Airways. I led the revenue management team for the Middle East. That was a really credible calling card to be able to get on airline projects in McKinsey.
And why did you go back to McKinsey? Why didn't you go to another consulting firm or to a bank? Or, why don't you kind of think about stacking different skills in a different culture or a different environment?
I have a soft spot for McKinsey. I love the culture. I love working with the people. I still had a lot of friends and colleagues there that I'd worked with before. And the scheme that I was on is really good because they want you to go out and get experience and come back. So they kind of left a space. They kind of left the door open for me. after this other experience that I'd had. So it was just a natural place to go back. Didn't see any other reason to go anywhere else.
How thoughtful have you been about your kind of career moves in terms of reverse engineering a wider plan versus serendipity and doors opening up?
I've not been that strategic. I've generally not been that strategic. I've generally looked for kind of places that are going to stretch me and opportunities and progression, really. I don't think that joining Uber for 6 months and then going for, I think it was longer than 6 months, but not that long, and then going to British Airways and then back to McKinsey, like if you look at it now, it doesn't seem that strategic. Like probably if I knew that I wanted to start my own company or do the kind of classic startup route, it would have been much more natural to stay at Uber for 5 years, probably, or 4 years, and then just raise a VC round and go and do, which is what a lot of people did. And I probably could have learned a lot more at Uber, to be honest. But I just wanted to go and kind of learn about the airline industry. So that's why I went to BA. So not been that strategic. I've just been looking for kind of what interests me and where I can progress and big roles that are going to stretch my capabilities.
And have you thought about your kind of building a rounded skill set, or have you kind of thought about, what are you interested in? What are you passionate about? What do you best use? What is your best skill set used for and deployed against? And then maybe where some of your weaknesses are, and kind of, have you thought about building a kind of a round circle around all of it, or have you kind of thought about doubling down on your strengths and kind of avoiding
generally doubling down on my strengths? That was some feedback that a training session that I had at McKinsey when I was there in the first couple of years, their perspective was, and I think it's based on lots of research, it's much better to get much better at your strengths and improve your weaknesses. Different people have different views, but that's generally what they thought, and I kind of agreed with that. So the general skill set that I got from McKinsey in the first couple of years, and then the training I had when I got back, I'm generally very happy with. The kind of core management skill set and analytical skill set and kind of critical thinking, and then I've tried to layer on top industry experience, basically. And then the only other thing that I've been trying to add, which is more recent, was I never really did much engineering or like software development, but I've always been interested in it. And I remember at McKinsey, I was using some of the tools which were like semi-technical, like more technical than Excel. I remember working with like millions of rows of data using Alteryx, which was this new like kind of workflow tool for working with big data sets. And I was one of the only analysts that was using it and did a project with it, and I got amazing feedback. I always felt like I was interested in more technical things, but never really had an opportunity to do it. So that was something that I proactively went out to do. Was I did a data science and analytics course, a part-time one at Lewagen, for 6 months, 2.5 years ago. It was like Monday and Tuesday nights, all day Saturday, in Shoreditch. Kind of classic.
Self-funded, or did McKinsey pay for you to do that?
Yeah. No, it was when I'm at L1. Yeah.
Okay, so you've done that while you were at L1, all self-funded.
L1, yeah, self-funded. I just I could see what was happening with AI, kind of right from the beginning. It's kind of an obvious thing to say, but I remember using ChatGPT for the first time. This was kind of towards the end of when I was at McKinsey the second time. And I said, I was an engagement manager at the time. And one of the things I would do would be to write an end of week email on like the progress of the project and what's gone well and what's not gone well. And this was when literally ChatGPT had just launched. So I said, write me an end of week email. And I was just like shocked by how good it was. And I remember posting it to all the team, and everyone was like, this is insane. This is crazy. Like, how good is this? And that was like 3.5, I think, like before they even released 4. Yeah. So clearly it's going to change. I thought it was going to change everything. And I was also building at that time a diagnostic tool it was basically using engine codes to try and work out what was wrong with the car. And we had this big engineering team that were building this like kind of, I would say, pre-LLM AI, kind of the more traditional now techniques, to try and work out what these engine codes mean and what it means for your car, what's wrong with it, basically. So we spent 12 months building this model, and we would just ask ChatGPT like some of these codes, and it would be as good. And it just like blew all of our minds, the kind of engineering
it's like a free
team.
Version or a 20 quid a month version was
like
as
better
good
than this kind of traditional model that had been trained with all of this supposedly proprietary data from this client that was going to mean that they were going to be super successful. And the kind of off the shelf ChatGPT was like as good at that, if not better, it wasn't any like post training or we hadn't given it the data. It was just like trained on the base level.
So when did you buy that house and the southeast coast in auction? Like, when did you?
That was when I was at McKinsey, and it took me quite a long time to save up enough money to do the first kind of project. So that was when I was at McKinsey
for the second time.
And I bought on the south coast because that's where my brother lived, and we wanted to do. It was just like a 3-bedroom terraced house. I think the previous owner had owned it for 20 years. It was at auction. Rather naively didn't get a survey done, which I should have done. The previous sale had fallen through, which I think it was basically the only 3-bedroom house that I could afford, and now I know why. Because I think the previous agreed sale had a survey done. It picked up all these issues, and I didn't get a survey done. Just went ahead with it. I was like, not time to do a survey. It'll be fine. We'll fix it. So I wanted to buy the house, renovate it, and then rent it out, and kind of learn and hopefully make some money doing it. And that was my kind of side hustle, inverted commas, that I was doing on a Saturday. I used to drive down to the south coast on a Friday night and meet my brother there, and then we'd work on it over the weekend, and then drive back to London and back to work. And he was also doing a lot of stuff during the week, so he did much more of the work than I did. Credit to him. And he was kind of learning as he went along as well, basically on YouTube. And we renovated this house. It just like every time, I remember the first thing that went wrong was I got the keys, and the previous owner had left all of the furniture. It's like the house was literally full of furniture. The attic was locked, and we smashed open this attic hatch, and that was full of furniture as well. And because I was stretching so much to buy it, it's like I wasn't very good, much better now, but I wasn't very good at identifying the cost of time relative to the cost of doing things. So we literally spent the first couple of weeks cutting up all this furniture and putting it in the back of my car and taking it to tips.
Yeah, paying to kind of dispose of it.
So we saved money on the disposal, but it was like really hard work. And then the more furniture we took out, the more problems we found. There were like roof leaks everywhere and tons of damp, because it's like a late kind of 1800s house. It's just like the like single skin walls, and we'd like take the plaster off and the whole wall behind was like crumbling. It's like the more we went into it, the more problems we found, but then we were trying to fix them as we went along. And it was good. It was a really good experience. It definitely didn't go to plan, but on the theme of like learning and just trying things, it was good. Like learned a lot about houses and really close to the detail about maintenance and like what needs to happen. And I enjoyed working with my brother on it. I really enjoyed that part.
And it was there that you were like, real estate is really interesting. And actually I want to move into this space. Not
when everything was going wrong in the renovation and constantly being dirty, and I just like constantly cleaning up all the time was something that I realized I was doing, because my brother was doing all the useful bits and I would just clean up after him. But the bit that I enjoyed was the finding the house, like looking at the ones, looking on Rightmove, trying to find a good deal, kind of modeling what you would do with it and figuring out what to do with it. That whole process, and then going to a new area and viewing the house and meeting the agent and looking around and trying to work out if it's a good area or not. Like that process and that activity, I think I would do for fun, even if people weren't paying me. Like I just enjoy it. I don't know why, but I enjoy that process. So I was just keen. It was just a realization that I had. I wanted to find a role where I could do that as a big part of what I was doing. Hence, trying to find a role like that and eventually move into L1.
So a headhunter called you and said, there's an opportunity at L1. We want someone with a consulting background.
Not quite. I found there's this job portal called Move Me On, which is targeted specifically at ex-consultants. And I always thought the jobs on there were kind of interesting compared to what you could see elsewhere. So I would always look at that. And then I saw this job at L1. I think it was like portfolio manager or something. And kind of the job title and the spec kind of wouldn't immediately interest me. I remember looking at the bullet points about what you'd actually be doing. I was like, that sounds really fun. That's what I want to do. It's like managing this portfolio of apartments and finding new apartments and looking at deals and kind of modeling the returns and working out what the rent's going to be. Like the day-to-day things look really like, actually it was like, that sounds like good fun, even though it wasn't the traditional role that a lot of my peers at McKinsey would go into. So I remember I just applied for the role and then had a conversation with David, who's the CEO, and kind of developed from there. And we kind of try and shape the role into the role that I do now, based a bit on what was needed and also what I was interested in and what would be exciting for me to do. And then I think almost 18 months later, I joined. That was kind of a bit
18 months later?
Yeah. So the first time around, discussed with David, but then ultimately decided to stay at McKinsey because I'd been working with a kind of core group of people at McKinsey for a long time on a client development, and the project had just come in, and I just really wanted to go and do this project. So it was I just couldn't bring myself to leave. So I stayed and did this project for a year. I had a great time, really enjoyed it, but I still had the itch to go into real estate and like be an investor, and that very different skill set. I couldn't scratch the itch. And my role at McKinsey as well, as I got more senior, was becoming more sales focused, bringing in the next project and kind of higher level relationships and managing a portfolio of things. And what I was looking for, that was a bit different to that, was, as I said before, more compounding gains, like sticking with something over a longer period of time and then looking back after 2 years and like you can actually see all of the decisions that you've made and the impact of them and where it's gone wrong and where it's gone right, and you own something. So I was keen to own something, and I was keen to have somewhere where I could learn and kind of compound over time, and that's why I ultimately left rather than staying at McKinsey. And I got back in contact with David, and the role, surprisingly, like kind of extremely lucky for me, was still open. And the second time around, I accepted it. And here we are. I'm 3 years in.
So for people listening to this who don't know who L1 Capital, L1 Property are, set the scene. What does the business do? Where does it invest? What does it invest in? And then let's talk about kind of the UK kind of property side as well.
So L1 Capital, now L1 Group, is a hedge fund business based in Australia. It was started, I think, about 20 years ago. To invest in public equities, following a typical long-short hedge fund strategy. They've been extremely successful in Australia, have a fantastic reputation, are amazing at what they do, and they have multiple strategies. They're very entrepreneurial, and they back different managers. And one of the strategies that they have is a residential property fund, which started in 2017. David, who's the current CEO, was one of the co-founders of that strategy back in 2017. And the idea of the strategy is residential property in the UK is very attractive from a fundamentals perspective. L1 Capital in Australia is kind of a value investor. They look for undervalued situations where the fundamentals are really strong and there's asymmetric upside, so kind of limited downside but lots of upside. And residential property ticked all the boxes back in 2017 and now ticks them probably even more. And it's a good place to invest. The investor base at the minute is very Australian. They're Australian investors, and the pitch to them is very strong. The fundamentals look good. UK residential property on the main metrics is significantly cheaper than in Australia on a price to earnings and a yield basis. So it's a good way for Australian investors to diversify. It's a good income play, and that's what we do. We buy existing assets. We don't do development. We're not a build to rent investor. We buy existing assets, kind of either PRS or BTR, kind of first or second generation, and we try and manage them very efficiently and drive good returns to our investors.
And in terms of kind of that buy box, in terms of kind of unit size, scale, location, give me a little bit more kind of color in terms of, an L1 property.
So we like in terms of locations, we're looking for a decent yield. So historically, we've not really invested in central London, but all of the cities outside of London are kind of right in our sweet spot. Leeds, Manchester, Birmingham, Sheffield, they're like the places where we own lots of stock. We like areas that have good transport links, good employment potential, good scope for rental growth. And then in terms of the asset size, we're looking for 50, 100 units. Most of our blocks don't have much amenity. We want mid-market rents. We're not looking to be the top 20% rents in an area in general. We want to be mid-market rents that are affordable for people. And we're okay with more complex situations. We can kind of handle that. And we're long-term owners. We're not looking to kind of buy and flip. We want to buy good, well-located assets at what we think are very attractive valuations right now, and then hold them for the long term and run them very efficiently.
And so you're buying, I guess, Gen 1, Gen 2, purpose-built, BTR, PRS, institutional grade rental stock, rather than trying to amalgamate small 1, 2, 3 bed kind of apartments from buy-to-let investors who are looking to kind of exit portfolios.
Yeah, exactly. We're not doing that. Although I think there's a massive opportunity in that, but it's just so fragmented. I don't know if anyone's done it. If you know of anyone that's done that successfully, then let me know. I think there's a huge opportunity, but that's quite difficult. We prefer to have kind of bigger assets, we were okay. It doesn't need to be purpose built. We have some kind of PDs, permitted developments, where it's an office building converted, as long as the standard of conversion is very good. We've seen some mixed conversions, but it doesn't need to be purpose built. We've got some assets that have some commercial as well, kind of retail on the ground floor. But generally it's city centre locations, studios, ones, 2 beds, where we think we can add value and manage them well. Yeah.
And in terms of the business itself, like what's the AUM, what's the units, and kind of what returns are you looking to kind of hit?
So we're about 300 million AUM at the minute, about 3,000 units. We have some student beds in there as well, but most of it is residential stock. And the return profile, I think, in common with most people, we're looking to generate returns more than 10%, with a good income.
With the majority of that coming from income rather than just capital appreciation.
Well, like roughly 50-50 income and capital appreciation. I think that, different people have different views, but rents grow 2-3% a year. A 50% leverage gets you kind of 5-6% return, and then a decent income component, which is why we historically focused more outside of London, because you didn't see very strong yields. But that's we're also seeing very good yields in London at the moment with the how the market is.
And in terms of kind of the model itself, are you vertically integrated, or how do you kind of segment the various different parts of the business?
We have become vertically integrated basically since I joined. When L1 first started investing in the UK, we were kind of outsiders and not so close to the market, and also didn't really have the scale. So they started out partnering with external agents. We still have external agents, and they do a fantastic job for us. And it's kind of, we have a bit of a mixed model, but we've been moving towards more vertically integrated. We set up a property management business, or an operating platform, as you call it, and hired property managers. And we thought we could drive better performance from that. I think there are a couple of structural reasons why. One of them is it's not a profit center for us. It's there basically to deliver better performance for our investment funds, which is the day job. That's what we do. So we give our property managers smaller portfolios in general than if they were working at a big property manager that's trying to maximize their returns more. So they have more time to focus. And we're much closer to them. So we kind of more involved in the day-to-day and providing direction and trying to execute the strategies that we want for all of the assets in the portfolio. And it's been hard work building it up, and property management, it's a very hard sector, but we've had good results so far, and it's a kind of a core part of what we do.
In terms of kind of that profitability kind of break-even point, I talk to a lot of kind of BTR, PRS type investors, and I'm certainly not an expert myself, but they talk about kind of 5,000 units is kind of the break-even point. Does that kind of ring true in terms of?
Yeah, probably. I think it depends. It depends what kind of structure you have and how you set it up. I think if you have more. It's interesting. If you have bigger BTR assets and they have a lot of people on site, I think you can make it work with a smaller portfolio size. Like we were looking at 1 or 2 portfolios that were much smaller than 5,000 units that already had kind of all the management in the house, but at each building they had a very good kind of building manager or development manager, maintenance, a kind of resident coordinator doing the lettings. Like I think that kind of stacks up. If you have 300 units and a decent average rent, they can kind of pay for the on-site team. So probably if you've got larger assets, it's slightly easier. We have more fragmented and different sizes. So we have most of our team are based at a central office in Manchester. But yeah, it's definitely not, I can see why 5,000 units is a break-even point. It's a tough industry.
So how, obviously not coming from a real estate background, how did you kind of think about setting this kind of platform up? Just talk to me through the kind of the rationale, the research, the kind of the lens at which you looked at creating this.
We didn't do that much. We did some research. Most of the research and knowledge was just built up from working in the sector since for the years that we have done. So there wasn't that much like kind of blue sky, let's do this like big research piece. It was more just based on our experience. And then the way that we approached it was incrementally. So we started out with where we had the most pain, basically, which was like block management on a specific portfolio. Let's start there. Let's hire a block manager that knows what they're doing, and then build a team around them and start doing that part really well. And when we're comfortable that we're doing that part really well, we can start doing the other parts. So we started out with, we did a few capital projects ourselves and had an in-house capability for some kind of refurbishment that we had. Then we added block management, and then finally we added the lettings. So we ended up with this like fully rounded team, and we've just grown it over time based on what's working. We had to add a new property management system, which is always a pain, because we started out probably with the wrong one, and then we had to move on to a new property management system. So the systems and processes has been an ongoing focus for us, and then we've tried really hard to attract and retain the best property managers that we can find with what we think is a compelling pitch. You get to work for an investor. We genuinely want our property managers to feel like they're an owner of the building that they're working in. They can kind of provide suggestions as if they were an owner about what they would do, and if they've noticed things or things we should change. We want to give them a portfolio that they really understand, let them get on site a lot, go out and see the assets and like see the building. That was one of the things we noticed from some of our external agents, was just that the team wouldn't actually go out and visit the buildings. Just say had large portfolios. It's just not really what they do. So like our team are actually visiting the assets that they're managing like super regularly. If they're really familiar with it, we try not to change the portfolios too much. And we want to hire the best property managers we can find.
This podcast is powered by Rockborn. We help real estate funds, owners, investors, and developers hire better quality leadership talent. So, if you're open to trying a different recruitment approach, head to rockborn.com for more information. And so, there's a proactivity there rather than a reactivity in terms of how you're kind of on the front foot, getting in front of building relationships with the customers, the tenants, the occupiers.
That's what we try to do. Yeah, exactly.
Talk to me about the kind of AI tech operational process piece and how you've thought about integrating that, building it and using it to drive margin from your kind of gross to net.
Yeah, sure. So I started out doing this. So I was shocked by how good the tools were, as we talked about already. So that was kind of the first nugget. This is going to take over the world, basically. And I was keen to be able to build more myself, which is why I went to do this data science and AI course, learning about GitHub, and I was coding in Python. And a lot of the techniques I would say were pre-LLMs, but just learning the fundamentals was super helpful. So I finished that course and I was like, right, I'm going to build something. So I started out, and the reason why I was trying to build something was like the main pain that I've experienced running this kind of with these two hats as an investor, but also running a property management business, is trying to hire good property managers is very difficult. It's an industry that is very tough on the people that work in it. They basically deal with complaints most of the time. There's lots of chasing involved. They manage these big portfolios, and it doesn't always retain the best people long term. They kind of get burnt out or they leave. It's like we're trying to get much better with our turnover, and thankfully it's improved a lot, but we're still seeing turnover of property managers. And like every time a property manager left, I felt like we lost all of the knowledge that they'd built up, and the next person had to get that knowledge back. And it's just like really, really painful, this hiring process. So I felt like, to solve my own pain, if we could use AI to support them and automate and improve a lot of the tasks, it would just solve that pain of not having to hire or not having to hire as many property managers, and hopefully give a better experience to the amazing property managers that we do have, because we can take away a lot of the stuff that maybe they don't enjoy doing. So that was the core thought. And I started out with a very simple voice agent on 11 Labs, which I configured like in a couple of hours. And I started taking maintenance phone calls using this voice agent. And basically, the questions that it would ask about your maintenance, let's say you called up and you said, I've got, my toilet won't fly, or my toilet's broken, or like, I've got a roof leak, I've got water coming into my apartment. The key thing is what questions you ask to try and understand what the topic is, what the issue is, basically, for maintenance.
So you had to kind of prompt your 11 Labs agent in terms of give it some context first so it understood.
Yeah, so I configured it with some context. You are a building maintenance assistant to triage maintenance, basically. And the questions that it asked were better than anyone in our team. like with very limited configuration, just the underlying level of intelligence was so high. So I remember like our head of maintenance was testing it and he was just like blown away. He was like, this is insane. Like, these are the questions that I'm asking. This is what I'm getting back. Like, you could see already the capability was just so high. And this was configuring this voice agent like May last year, kind of almost a year ago. And it was just amazing. And then I linked it up with a database and gave it some tools and it became this little system. And then we were just testing it and using it with some of our residents. And every time you threw something at it, it handled it. Like, I remember like I would call and raise an issue and it would triage it really nicely. Then it would raise the maintenance task in my database and I could see it on this really basic front end that I built on the web. And I remember in the prompt, it had something like, produce a suggested fix for this maintenance issue. So you triage it, but also what is the fix and how much is it going to cost to get it fixed? What's the cost of the maintenance? And I would raise this job and then go in and look at it. And then our team would test it more. And we'd almost be giving it maintenance jobs as we were walking around new assets that we saw, like taking pictures of things and kind of testing
just like
it.
trying to feed it and
test it basically. And every time it was right. It was like, our head of maintenance was like, this is the correct estimated cost. This is the correct fix. Like it's right, guys. It's like, right. And this is not the thing I'd heard always before was, all of these businesses would have all this proprietary data like about maintenance jobs or historic maintenance jobs. So it's going to mean it would be way more accurate if you trained it with all this extra data. And in reality, that's not the case. Like the base model is fine, amazing. So you don't need any of that data. So like we realized it was very good and it was going to, I think it basically most of what the property management team are doing, you can automate the whole thing and it's going to actually have better outcomes because what you're talking about is unlimited intelligence that's available just kind of on tap, which basically with an API call to OpenAI or Anthropic or Google, whichever your model of choice is. So surely you can apply that to a property management workflow. So it was a system that I basically vibe coded myself. We started using it. It was insanely good. And then we decided to kind of double down on it. And that's been my philosophy since I did this course and even deciding to do this course. It's like all in on AI and technology. And I want to build and improve and get the compounding benefit from the technology for ourselves. And that's what we've been trying to do. The thing that I found was if I vibe coded it, it was not really production grade. So things would it wouldn't always be the most reliable. And like I didn't always know how to fix it if it didn't go wrong. And I really wanted to not have voice, also have WhatsApp, because there was this like nugget of an insight that a lot of our people living in our buildings were communicating with us on WhatsApp. Like they just want to get the number of the property manager and send them a WhatsApp. But our property managers hated receiving WhatsApps because they just can't deal with it. They can't have
WhatsApps, emails, kind of portals.
They can't have all these different channels, and people would WhatsApp them at the end of the day. And in line with property management's a really tough job, and they get a lot of complaints. Like they just can't deal with this level of communication. And then people would get very frustrated because they send you a WhatsApp, and they I don't know, maybe the door's broken in their building and they're seeing that every day, or there's a cleaning issue. And for them, it's their home. They really care about it. And our property managers also care about it, but they have 15, 20 different priorities, and maybe they're replying to the building safety regulators like number one, and they've got to send like hundreds of pages of documents. So they struggle to get to it. But that person, they really care about it and they see it every day. And so like if the person was WhatsApping our property manager, they wouldn't always get the best service. And so that was the insight was lots of people using WhatsApp. I wanted to communicate with people on WhatsApp, but that part I struggled to vibe code myself. So we needed to bring in someone that actually knew what they were doing.
So firstly, what's the name of the course that you went on? Because I know people listening to this are going to want to know what the name of that course is. So
it was called the Data Science and AI Bootcamp. There's a full-time and a part-time. So the full-time is if you want to actually transition your career and go into data science, which I knew that I didn't want to do, but there was this full-time version and the part-time one, which I did. And I was really keen that it was in person. Like I just wanted the experience of learning with other people rather than doing it on Teams or like on Zoom.
Yeah.
So I found a full-time version and signed up to it. And I was really lucky because the dates aligned really well with when my first child was due. So kind of the course finished and I had a baby. So I was like, I got it out of the way before I had a family.
Tick with Mrs.
Which was good. I remember the due date was like just before the final presentation. And I was like, maybe it'll be delayed or not. But anyway, I missed the final presentation, but I managed to do the whole course. And I loved the course. It was great. It was like, I think they hadn't updated the content so much for LLMs. So we were training a neural net using labeled images off the internet and trying to identify waste. That was our final project. So you'd like train this neural net, and when it finished training, it was like so satisfying because it was like quite difficult to get it set up and training, and it would take quite a long time to train it. And then you'd like take a picture, and we had this front end app built using Streamlit that would use the model to try and identify the waste. And when you train the model, you can only train it based on the labels that are in your data set. So the labels were, is it plastic? Is it paper? Is it metal? Like those kind of high level labels. So we train the model and try and work out if we took a picture of a book over there, like would it identify what the material it was made of? And if there's no books in the data set, it wouldn't identify it. And it was okay, but it wasn't that good. And I remember just uploading pictures to ChatGPT, and or I was even doing my own API calls in Python. I would like send the same image to the OpenAI API, and you could change the prompt to anything you wanted. You were like, identify a crushed Coke can in the image, and it would do it every time. So like the LLMs were just way more powerful than this like traditional training the neural nets. But anyway, I learned that, and we haven't really used that. And they've also updated the course since then to be much more LLM focused. But just the core of the course, working with people like writing code, like deploying applications on GitHub, like that stuff, I just loved it. It was amazing. I think I'm like I really want to go deep in things and like build things. So it was really well aligned with that, and it's one of the best things that I've done doing the course.
Did you have a look at kind of external software platforms or providers who can kind of create an off-the-shelf type model or solution to the issue, or did you have to build it internally yourself? Because there's costs and there's risks of doing both.
Definitely, yeah. I didn't really look for an external provider just because, like, quite selfishly, I just wanted to do it myself. I was just like kind of enjoying it, and like I wanted to learn basically. And I felt like it was quite new. So there weren't that many people doing. The idea of an AI property manager is really common now. There's lots of startups doing it. They all kind of emerged at the same time last year. So there's lots of competition now. And there were probably lots of people you can go to try and kind of get similar things. At the time when I was kind of vibe coding this voice agent, there probably weren't as many. But I think that the compounding benefit and the insights that we have as an investor and an operator, and how closely integrated we are with a property manager, give us a reason why we should continue the approach we're doing. I mean, who knows what's going to happen, but we get the benefit from being very close to a property management business, and we just try and keep improving the system over time.
You've hired a data engineer from Google. Was that to kind of help ensure there's no key man risk in terms of if you get hit by the number 13 bus and you're the gatekeeper to kind of this system? Or is it about kind of institutionalizing it and kind of building on the kind of the vibe coded kind of API plugged in system that you created? Yeah,
I think you can, if you want to build a production grade system that's operating at scale, like it's possible, but still difficult. I'd say even with, the tools that I was working with back then were nowhere near as good as they are now. So like Lovable was just Lovable I was using for my front end, like kind of when it first launched and everyone was talking about it, and it was amazing for the front end and kind of using a kind of off the shelf like database. Now the vibe coding tools are significantly better. Not even, vibe coding is the wrong word for like Claude code. It's like proper engineering that anyone could do. And like I'm contributing to our code base using Claude code, which just blows my mind. So like the vibe coding tools were not as good, but mainly like I just wanted to work with amazing people again. So like I was like, wanted a full stack engineer to build the whole system. And the pitch was we've got something already, it's working. We have this amazing vision about where it's going to go, a compelling vision that you can buy into, but you've got the stability right now of joining we are an established place, and full ownership over the full system, the technology, kind of what language do we start with? Like we kind of rebuilt it from scratch. We didn't use anything that I'd previously built. And the sandbox of just being able to build stuff and deploy it and just get on with it. Like, I remember I did a business building project at McKinsey before I left. And I came out of that thinking, there's 3 things I can do to improve the chances of success of building something new. One was have a very high bar for talent. Like, we were working with a whole range of people from the client and from McKinsey, and over time, I don't think the bar was kept as high as it could have been. So a very high bar for talent. Secondly is kind of everyone has a stake in the outcome, like equity, which I think is a super powerful route. Why startups are successful. Aligned incentives, everyone's got a stake in. And the third is like not much process. I remember at McKinsey, this project was amazing. We delivered great things, but nobody on the team had a personal stake in the outcome apart from their kind of performance review. And there was lots of process and kind of updates and board updates, which you have to have because you're working for a client. So you have to update the client. But I remember spending much more of my time doing those updates than actually talking to customers. So I was keen that we don't have much process. So we sort of do the right things and make sure we mitigate our risk, but there's not a huge like sign off process or approval process. We just kind of build things that we think are going to be helpful for us and deploy them, and then we learn very quickly.
And you deploy them and you test them within, a certain number of residents, your kind of guinea pigs that kind of know that you're testing and trialing on them.
Yeah. And the testing and trialing is not just like the system is resident facing, but most of what we're testing and trying to improve is not resident facing.
It's the back end that they can't.
It's like, how do you get updates extremely frequently and like regularly from your supply network, the kind of contractors and maintenance operatives that you're working with? Like, how do you make the system very easy for them to use? How do they send updates to you? Like, how do your team monitor a system where, like, the traditional software in property is kind of like for maintenance is like a ticketing system. So the property management team are using this system to keep up things updated and progress things, and they're adding all of the updates. So the interface you need for that system is basically surfacing all the information to the people who are using it. And it's basically just a database with a front end attached to it. One of the main things we're thinking about, and we haven't really reached the right answer yet, but it's where a lot of the focus is what's the interface for a system where a very high proportion of the work eventually will be done by AI. So like, do the team that's working with that system need to see everything, or do you only surface the things that they need to see that you want them to take action on, is the kind of key question. And if you ask the team who are working with the system, they want to see everything because they don't have confidence it's going to work, and they just want to see everything and they're interested. But maybe if they see everything, they miss the most important things that you actually want them to take action on. And the system is very good at identifying what that is. So an alternative view of the world is the system basically decides where property managers should input, including maybe even decides where I should input. There's like a version of the screen for like, this needs to be escalated to the management team, or like this needs some input from somebody more senior. And I only see those things rather than seeing everything. So that's where we have to do a lot of iteration. And there's this weird tension where as you're starting out, you don't know the system's going to be working, so you need to see more of it. But if you see too much of it, you're kind of constraining what the system can do. And there's a big theme at the minute around prompt engineering. So previously prompt engineering, you had to have these really detailed prompts and tell the model in capitals what not to do. Do not do this or do not do that. And now, because the models keep getting better and better, you're basically taking stuff out of your prompt to like give it more freedom, and it actually makes better decisions. And we have a similar thing with the system and the configuration that you have. Like, how many guardrails do you have? How do you look at it? What UI do you have? How do you get your team involved? And actually, as the fundamental models, the kind of foundational models get better, maybe you need less of that stuff. But in order to take that stuff away, you have to be quite comfortable taking some risk, which the property industry is not that known for. So you kind of have to take risk in an intelligent way. And every time we have tried to take a risk like that or kind of launch something, like, it's always been successful. The models have always surprised us. And that's clearly the way everything's going to go. But you have to be comfortable taking that risk.
Have you spent less on human capital and labor because of your AI or kind of tech platform system that you've created? Or are you going to see benefits in due course because of that? Or are you able to kind of service and triage and execute and fix more problems with the same kind of headcount because of the tech system?
Exactly. It's with the same team dealing with more. The number of phone calls that we take has gone way down because most people are kind of interacting with the system using WhatsApp to report. So we need a smaller team or we're able to grow with the same team, basically. It's kind of what's actually happening. And I think that the role and the skills you need are going to change over time. Who knows what's going to happen? Like, people were talking about this, all the jobs were going to disappear. That was a theme maybe 3-6 months ago. Now the heads of all those AI labs are kind of rowing back on that, and actually those jobs are always going to be there, and we're going to need more people. So I don't know how that's going to evolve in our very small niche part of the world, which is property management. TBD. Maybe the team are going to spend way more time with residents proactively, kind of checking in on them, and how's the property for you, and can we do things, or maybe we'll offer these additional services. Who knows how it's going to play out, and less time chasing reactive maintenance, which is the use case we've gone with at the beginning. But the day-to-day of the work that they're doing today, or they were doing a year ago, or they've been doing on average for the last couple of years, which property management hasn't changed very much. I'm very confident that 80% of that activity, if not more, is possible to do today with an AI system that's kind of well configured and has the right context and tools. So the 20% that's left is, in general, the most complex parts, where you need the team involved, and what they're doing will probably be a bit different. Maybe dealing with really complex leaks where it kind of involves the block manager, or maybe the apartment above, like more time needed on the ground. I don't know. But I think if the work itself doesn't change, and there's like a set amount of work that was happening previously and will happen in the future, then you'll need a much smaller team. And I think it will be a more senior team handling those escalations. And I think the 80% that's handled by AI, maybe you won't even see it. It just happens. And then the other thing I'll say is we have this like kind of benchmark internally for when we know the system is operating to its full potential, or like to a high level of potential, is when it chooses to do something and we give it the freedom to do something that our property management team wouldn't have done. So it's not just making the same decisions that we did with the same accuracy, but like has all the context about, let's say, a building where it's handling reactive maintenance for 6 months, and it notices a trend, and it kind of models out the cost benefit of maybe all of it's actually a real example, but the plumbing under the sink is quite poor quality, and we're constantly getting leaks from that and blockages and things. And the system just decides to replace them all proactively.
Orders.
It just sends out, literally, it kind of scopes out what the work is that's needed to be done, sends that out to 5 contractors, already knows what they're able to do and their performance from everything that it's seen in the past, receives the quotes back, models that against our profitability targets and kind of what we're trying to achieve for this building, and decides it's the right thing to do given the length of time that we're going to hold the asset and what the benefit's going to be, and then does it. And then we're like, oh wow, it's kind of, we would never have done that, because in reality our team would be very busy and kind of in reactive mode and kind of firefighting a bit, and lots of reactive jobs coming in. So actually doing something proactive, you need to have some time to do that. And actually that would have been someone analyzing all of it and then presenting it, and then somebody signing off. But if the system, you just configure the system and give it all the right information and the tools to be able to do that. Like, you actually have to have the tools, and the tools need to work if the system decides to use them. To enable that to happen, I think that would be a bit of a kind of wow moment. And that's possible today. It's just all the work you have to do to make that happen.
Do you think you'll end up spending more on tokens than salaries?
Yeah. Not right now. I mean, the what we're doing is not very token intensive, is what we've found so far. It's kind of been less than we expected. But maybe in the future, I mean, the cost, given how critical the models are, like you can't do without them, obviously. Maybe the cost's going to go way up, and actually you would do. So that's possible. But the open source models are just insanely good too. I don't think many people are spending that much time on the kind of cost optimization front, because everything's new and you're just trying to get the benefit from it, and it kind of continues to surprise you where you can use it. But in the future, cost optimization of the token's probably going to become a much bigger thing. There'll be huge loads of gains you can get and things you route to open source models. But no, we're not currently seeing that. And I'm genuinely excited by the things that we wouldn't have done today. I think that's going to be another benefit. But you kind of, and on the difficulty scale, in order to unlock those things, it's like more difficult than just doing the things that we would have done today, as well as our team.
When do you take kind of some of the learnings, some of the lessons, and apply that to transactions and investment, and kind of bridging that portfolio and asset management piece as well, and then also kind of interfacing with investors?
Yeah, we're doing that as well. We're not investing as much in that because we basically didn't feel as much pain on that side. I think that is more of a craft. The tools that we're using work extremely well, and there's huge benefit to be had there. You probably need to build less of this system. You're not interacting with like thousands of residents and kind of signing off real payments. It's kind of more analysis focused. So if you configure Claude co-work in the right way, like you get basically most of the benefit from doing it. So we're all in on AI in that side of the business as well. But there's less, like, I would say maybe we've got it wrong, but so far less building and optimization involved. We're getting a lot of the benefits already, and the what makes us successful on the investment side is probably like kind of a bit different. It's less the mechanical nature of the analysis. Like if we can do, like imagine with the same team, we can analyze 100 times more deals than we would have done in the past. Is that going to make us 100 times more successful? It's like, probably not. It's like, what makes us successful is the investor relationships, the results we drive, which just does impact the results, and our relationships in the market and the kind of deal flow that we see rather than the number of deals that we're analyzing, and our knowledge about the areas as well. So I think it's just a bit less. I think what makes us successful is less mechanical on that side of the business, but it doesn't mean we're all in and trying to use all these tools and using them very successfully.
So what does growth look like for L1 Property?
So we think about growth in our investment business, which is growing the assets under management, like which we've grown very successfully, and we want to continue to do that, like delivering more for our investors and kind of widening our investor base and also widening our profile in the UK. So that's mainly what we're focused on, and it's going well. And the story that we can tell is very compelling, where we've got the macro fundamentals in the UK are very strong. What we've built in terms of our investment capability and the platform, and then adding AI on top, where I think we want to be kind of best in class at using AI and with the capabilities to do that and getting the benefit and kind of seeing where it can take us. So the growth for us on that side is very clear. And then we're also trying to grow in line with the team that you described. We've hired a great engineering team, and the reason for doing that is we basically want to learn and continue to improve the system. And we're really seeing the compounding gains that we were talking about at the beginning in terms of how you configure the system and what information you give it and how do you interact with the contractor network. They want to get jobs done quickly, efficiently, get paid, get the right information up front, not have to deal with a lot of admin at the back end. And the more we can improve that process for them, the better outcome all of our kind of agencies and we get.
I guess better data, feed it better, which kind of informs better decisions for everyone and everything the whole time.
Yeah, there's another agency I was talking to even today about using our system, and they have a portfolio of HMOs, and at the minute they don't have the best data on each of the HMOs. Like you can imagine the kind of data you would need for a kind of AI triage system to be really good. Like what's the heating system and how many, what are the layout of the rooms? Like which room is above another room? I don't know. What are the appliances in this HMO? What happens if somebody loses their key? What's the process around that? Who are the preferred contractors? Like there's a whole load of context that you need for a property that the property manager is not always written down, but the property manager knows. And usually the best experience I've heard from people from their agency is usually when the person that's dealing with their property has been there a long time. They've built up the context. They know the property very well. They're like, this person's amazing. I always called them. I speak to them in the office. They give me great service. So I was talking to them about how you get that context and actually write it down. And it doesn't need to be in a really structured way. It can literally be, even talking about it this way, just a markdown file about the property. A lot of it's publicly available, so you could do a deep research, get that base markdown file for that property, and then you add the context from the property manager on top, and then that's the kind of context, if you like, that goes into the system that makes it really good. But the process of actually working out where that context is and writing it down and collecting it for hundreds of different properties is kind of, it's doable, but it's not a trivial thing. It's like you have to plan it and work out who's going to do it. And I think for the first time, well, this is different to the past, there are real benefits from writing it down. This would have been for me in the nice to have previously, where you think you need this kind of data and it should be written down somewhere, and like it's clearly a good thing to have, but like you don't see any immediate benefits of doing it. It's like the last thing on the to-do list all the time that you just never get to. But I think if you're using an AI system like this, you actually see the benefits from writing it down, and it should be like top of your priority list, even above dealing with the maintenance day to day, because as soon as you put it in there, the system gets way better and is way more effective at dealing with the issues, and you just get like these compound returns from doing that and writing it down. So that's what we're discussing. How do you get that information and get it into the system? And the second thing we were discussing, which I genuinely believe for any agency or property manager, is like the system gets better over time. So like you start using it, there's not that much context, you don't have that much information about the properties, and maybe at the beginning you're not willing to take that many risks, so you have lots of human in the loop. It's a classic AI term, where like the human is reviewing each of the steps before anything can happen. And I think what happens over time is the system builds up more context about the buildings, the residents, the processes of your kind of agency. So it gets better over time and more effective. And also you get more comfortable taking the risks. So then you can suddenly start taking the guardrails off. And then the more guardrails you take off, the better it gets. And then you see more benefit, and you get this like amazing reinforcement loop. So what I think is really important is just getting on that first step and then being able to move up the steps as quickly as possible, because I think you need to start somewhere. And if you don't start, then you can't suddenly jump to a world where everything is automated. And that's sometimes where we can lose people. When you were talking about this vision, where I love this vision of an autonomous building, almost like a Waymo for buildings, where the building itself is doing the management. So like it's kind of controlling entry and exit and controlling maintenance, and maybe it's linked into it's a bit futuristic or sci-fi, but linked into the CCTV and actually has vision, or can actually kind of perceive what's happening in the physical space. And you don't need any people. The only people you need are people maybe monitoring the system to make sure nothing goes wrong, which I don't think it would very often, and the people actually physically doing the work, until we have robots, like people actually going to fix stuff or cleaning the building. But if you pitch that vision to property manager with where they are today, it's just like, oh wow, man's like blown. I can't even imagine that thing. So you kind of have to start somewhere, which maybe is we take maintenance jobs on WhatsApp using AI. And it's a new channel because we couldn't take WhatsApp previously. And then when the job comes in, everything else is handled by our team. That's the first step. And then what's the next step? You automate the creation of the works orders. So suddenly the system can create works orders and send them, maybe without the team approving it. And then maybe you automate the chasing of contractors. And then suddenly you 20 steps and you've actually got closer to that end state. But I think it will be difficult to just jump straight in and end up at the end state. Well, that's my experience so far. Maybe that will change as the foundational models just keep getting better and better. I mean, if they continue on the trajectory, who knows what it's going to be like in 6 months, 12 months time. But
yeah, we haven't even spoken about like rent to human. We haven't even spoken about robots and the impact, what that looks like. We'll have to get you back for round 2 to discuss that.
Sounds
in
good.
Due course. If I give you £500 million worth of capital, who are the people, what property, and which place would you look to allocate that capital? Probably,
I mean, I love what we do, so I'm going to be a bit biased. I think we love secondary cities around the UK, and like I'm really positive about Leeds, Manchester, Birmingham. I think cities are a great place, and they're going to continue to be strong. So like those kind of locations, we're all in on, and like it's really positive about the future of cities. And then in terms of what assets, I think like secondary offices in some cities are like oversold, and there's like more opportunity, and like we're massively probing in the office and like seeing the benefits of collaborating with a team. So like I think offices are kind of interesting, but I think at the minute that city centre apartments are just extremely cheap and not really valued, had a really tough time with all the compliance and leasehold, and I think there's a big opportunity there. Individual flats is like, if you can see lots of individual apartments in the UK going to auction at very, very low prices because there are basically no buyers at the minute. So I think some sort of aggregation play on that would be extremely interesting.
Even grittier.
But extremely gritty. And I think very operationally complex, let's say. So better to have 100 apartments in one building.
So kind of UK, regional, secondary cities, doing what you're doing, living, but also maybe kind of secondary offices.
Living with maybe some secondary offices,
And in terms of kind of people?
And people.
Yeah, talk to me about maybe kind of the makeup of a kind of a team, or how do you see kind of an org chart, or how do you see kind of maybe the structure of that in the future, being able to kind of deploy that capital?
I think you'll need... I don't think that core team is going to change that much. I think you'll need a smaller team to deploy 500 million than you would have done in the past. Like probably fewer analysts or associates, like kind of, because a lot of that work will be automated. It'll be more judgment based, I would say. But I think you'll still need the core kind of IC and decision making and the people that are actually getting out and seeing the assets and being on the ground. I don't think that's going to go away.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today, sharing a little bit about your background journey and what you've been building at L1 Property and the impact and results you've been having.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
If you enjoyed this week's episode, do me a favour and send it to a friend or colleague. And if you've got any guest recommendations, hit me up on LinkedIn. I would love to hear from you. Hope to see you next week.